This week we're picking up in verse 2 of 2 Peter chapter 2. Now in the first three verses we looked at last week, Peter assures the hurting people of this church that God will judge the false teachers that are just devastating them. Just remember our whole context here. The church is already suffering persecution. Peter, within a few years of this, he knows he's going to die. God has told him that his life is at an end. So they're seeing just devastation come to their family and friends from the world around. And now they're suffering under these false teachers who are promising to bring God's goodness or joy or happiness, but all they're doing is manipulating and corrupting the people. So Peter's point here in emphasizing that this judgment is going to come to them is really twofold. First, God is a God who judges wickedness. He's a holy God who cannot and will not abide the evil that men do. Peter gives evidence. He said, look, in the past, he didn't spare the rebellious angels and cast them into Tartarus. I'll say more on that in just a minute. He didn't spare humanity in Noah's time because they were just so corrupt and all their actions were evil. He didn't spare the wicked men and women of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he won't spare the false teachers who are deceiving the church in his time. Men who know better, and I just love this image. He said they're like dogs who return to their vomit, right? They have this knowledge of God. They know the truths of God, yet they have returned to the evil and wickedness of the world for their own gain. Or the women who also know better, who have come to know holiness and righteousness in God, but like a sow, they bathe again in the filth and unrighteousness and sin of the culture. So God's not going to spare them. So Peter gives that assurance. But his second point here in giving this very harsh judgment against these evil teachers, there's a second part here, is that God is holy God who will also spare the righteous remnant. Peter again points back to history. He says, look, he spared Noah and his family. He spared Lot. And church, God will spare you and I from the wickedness of this generation. I mean, I look through social media and I'm talking about Christian people who are so driven by sensuality, who are so driven by greed, not just for money, but maybe greed for political power. And they will use God and they will use the name of Jesus and they will manipulate churches. And they will do whatever they can. And it gets so overwhelming and frustrating. Like, what chance do I have to speak against this? What can I do to turn the tide? Well, I'll do what I can, but ultimately it's not about me. And I just trust that God is going to spare us. He will be faithful because he is a holy, good God. So this week, that leaves me with two things, really, that I want to leave us with. The first is a word of warning. Our battle is real. This passage affirms, whether we know who these angels are, and we can talk about demons and angels and all that kind of craziness, look it up, that's fine. But there are real spiritual forces who want to destroy us. And they are working today through these false teachers, through false leaders in our government, through friends and family who have just given in to their own greed and desire and sensuality. Those evil forces are working to derail us. There are real deceivers. I call them blind foxes, but God will judge them. So just know that. Be encouraged by that. Second, the real encouragement is that God's going to take care of us. This comes in chapter 3, and we'll touch on that next week in the next part of Peter's letter. But there is hope if we grow in knowledge, if we pursue holiness, and if we just simply learn to trust in God.